Sulfonamides and potentiated sulfonamides are the next group that we're going to talk about. These are some of the first antimicrobials that were around and used throughout the country. And so, because of that, there is a fair amount of resistance to them. Some parts of the country, people may not use these drugs at all because they consider that there is a lot of resistance to it. One of the things that I encountered when I was on the equine rotation at CSU is some of the equine practitioners that came from other parts of the country didn't use trimethoprim because they considered it to be resistant in their part of the country. Somebody else mentioned to me that if you're in Florida and you have an infection, it is going to be more humid, it's going to be warm. Those are really great conditions for keeping infections going. And so some folks may consider that the antibiotic is ineffective, but it may just be part of the environment. Whereas out here, where we're pretty dry, we don't have that potential. Usually, if you can keep a bandage on a wound on a horse, it's going to heal eventually. We just don't get the same kinds of problems. So it may be partially environment, but there is definitely resistance to these drugs because they've been around a long time. So this term potentiated, we've talked about it before, it enhances the activity. But how do we do that? Well, in general, sulfas act by going after the synthesis by the bacteria of folic acid. We don't have to worry about this in mammals because we acquire our folic acid through our diet. We don't synthesize it on our own. But in bacteria, if they don't synthesize it, it severely inhibits growth. And if we add trimethoprim or ormetoprim to the sulfa drug, then those two drugs will target different enzymes in the pathway that produces the folic acid. So we're attacking that folic acid synthesis on a couple of levels. What that does is it makes the sulfa drugs, which are normally bacteriostatic, into bactericidal drugs. So it creates a better drug from a couple of different standpoints. So that's how we potentiate sulfa drugs, is target the same pathway, just different enzymes in that. So these combined drugs are drugs such as sulfadimethoxine, which is Primor, that's ormetoprim, and sulfadimethoxine. Sulfadiazine has trimethoprim added to it. Its trade name is Tribrissin. Sulfamethoxazole is Septra. That's a human product, and it has trimethoprim in it too. I would say mostly this Tribrissin product gets used a lot. It's typically called trimethoprim sulfa, and is used in the small animal world and definitely in the large animal world. These drugs have been used in poultry, and that's why I have this Appenzel bearded hen there. Uh, Sulfasalazine is one that you've heard of before. Yes, you have. It was back in the anti-inflammatory chapter, and if you pick the name apart, we're going to look at it again here in a minute, you might remember it a little bit better. So those are the main drugs. You do not need to memorize all of these names, but you can see they all start with sulfa. So that identifies them as a sulfa drug. So when we have the potentiated sulfas, they have a pretty broad spectrum. They go after gram positives and gram negatives. We're really talking about aerobic bacteria. They'll treat urinary tract infections, that's UTI, respiratory infections, wound infections, foot rot, and they are also the drugs of choice for protozoal infections. So coccidia that occur in the GI tract, toxoplasma, which is an organism that we worry about with cats, and Sarcocystis neurona is the protozoa responsible for equine protozoal myelitis in horses. So coming back to sulfasalazine, let's look at the name. So sulfa, it has a sulfa drug in it. Salazine sounds like salicylic acid, which is aspirin. So that's the part that we really use this drug for, not so much the sulfa part. That part sort of just goes away, it's cleaved off, and the salazine is the part that we're really looking to act. It is not absorbed well, so most of it stays in the GI tract. And this is referred to as an enteric sulfa drug. So it's meant to stay in the enterals, in the GI tract, and not be absorbed, versus systemic, which most of the other drugs in this category are. They go throughout the body and don't just act in one spot. Absorption is different depending on whether you're a monogastric or a ruminant. Monogastrics absorb it pretty well. With a ruminant, you want to check the dosages because depending on the particular ruminant and the age of the animal, it may make a difference. In our young ruminants, they are neonates in particular, they are considered monogastric animals, so they'll have different dosages than when the drug goes into the rumen. When they're very young, the esophageal groove basically bypasses the rumen. After the rumen is developed, then we start to get a difference in how these drugs are absorbed. So age and diet and species can all affect how well these drugs are absorbed orally. They're distributed really well. They're lipophilic, so they end up in all kinds of fluids, pleural, peritoneal, synovial, cerebral spinal fluid. They'll get into the prostate gland and they'll penetrate the blood-brain barrier. So little note here for studying for the final. Be sure that you know the drugs that cross the blood-brain barrier and that can be used to treat central nervous system infections. Your book most likely has a question in the back of the chapter. So be sure that you know which drugs can cross the blood-brain barrier because it's really important to know which ones are effective in that way. So the metabolism and excretion, I'm not going to make a big deal about it except to say that some are filtered very freely through the glomerulus and then actively secreted into the tubules. And so they end up with a high concentration in the urinary bladder. And so some of these are used for urinary tract infections because of the high concentration. The Bear in mind that the potentiated sulfas, the extra ingredients may have different penetration through parts of the body and have different half-lives. So it's really important that both of these arrive in the sulfa drug and the potentiated substance, the trimethoprim or ormetoprim, arrive in the tissue you want to treat in the right concentration for the right length of time because otherwise the drug becomes bacteriostatic if we just have one or the other on board. Because of this, some veterinarians want to really, really cover it, and they will prescribe the drug to be given twice a day, even though the label may say once a day. You generally want to stick with what the label says because there's some precautions here that I'm going to talk about. But that is why, in some cases, veterinarians will lean toward that twice a day because they want to make sure that both drugs get to the tissues in the right concentration for the right amount of time. One of the greatest precautions in dogs, using this in dogs, is dry eye. This is just something that occurs in some dogs and not in others. We can't really predict it. If you remember, we talked about dry eye back in the anti-inflammatory chapter. I talked about it in connection with a drug called etogesic. So sulfa drugs can also cause dry eye, and this is the look of dry eye, a kind of dull cornea, and then in the morning, this thick tear fluid will become crusty. So in the morning, the owners see crusts, and then they'll see this sort of goopy look to the eye during the day. It is not reversible once we've got it through giving these drugs, but there is another drug we can use to treat it called cyclosporin, but we have to give it several times a day And that is a lot for an owner to have to do with an animal for the rest of its life. There are some surgeries that we can do as well, but in general, we'd like to avoid this. So it's something that you want owners to tell you about and that you want to caution them about. Next semester, you're going to get to do the test yourself. This is the Schirmer tear test. It's a piece of paper, has a little notch. We bend it at that notch and hook it onto the lower eyelid. We would normally be closing that eye, holding it gently shut with that in there. That paper irritates the eyes, the tears start to flow, it starts to wet the paper, and it carries this dye down. And you can measure in millimeters, that's what these are, how many millimeters get wetted in a certain amount of time. Normal is 15 millimeters in 60 seconds. If we have less wetted paper in that time, then we have a diagnosis of dry eye. So some other precautions, the enteric sulfasalazine, even though it's meant to stay in the GI tract, remember about a third of it gets absorbed. So we need to be careful if we're using it in cats because they do not metabolize um, aspirin very well. The other big thing in this category is hypersensitivity, and this is not uncommon. We do see it, it seems like in Doberman pinschers, especially. So it might be a reason for veterinarians to avoid it. They may not want to give this drug to Doberman pinschers. What we'll typically see are the beginnings of skin reactions with itchiness, facial swelling, and hives, which appear like large parts of the fur that are raised. And this can lead to liver necrosis and failure. So we definitely want to catch that early. Your book talks about a variety of skin problems that actually get caused by giving sulfa drugs. There's a whole little case study. The other thing that we have to watch for is we want to make sure that animals are well hydrated when they're given these drugs. Really, we want them to be hydrated when they're given any drugs, and we want them to be hydrated at any time. But especially if they're given these drugs, this is not a great drug to give to a dog that's kept outside in a kennel where a bowl of water can be knocked over. We want to make sure that they are um, well hydrated because crystals can form in the renal tubules and damage them. Doesn't occur with herbivores, just the animals that have acid or neutral type urine. And the main way to prevent this is to just make sure that animals are well hydrated at all times and not to go on the high end of the dosage ranges. Some other things we'll see are thrombocytopenia, leukopenia, and anemia. Owners may see the anemia appear as pale mucous membranes. Usually we're giving these drugs for a while for these blood abnormalities to occur, and if that goes on, then it's appropriate to get the animals in periodically and look at blood work to see if this is occurring. With cats, if we give them broken tablets or if the tablets get caught in the throat, they can salivate heavily. It just causes that. And that's pretty distressing to owners. So it's always a good idea with these guys with cats to give them a syringe and have them follow it with water to try to get it down. All right, so here's the questions for sulfonamides, and I will ask you a question about them.